We're here at MedTech World Summit 2022, and together with us today we have Jhonatan Bringas Dimitriades, who is the CEO and co-founder of Lapsi Healthcare, as well as the founder and CEO of 𝐂𝐨𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐻. So, first of all, thanks for accepting the invitation for being here, both to speak on stage, but also kind of for this interview. And before we delve into the health tech stuff, what is your first impression of Malta? I know this is the first time that you've been here.
This is my first time, and thank you for inviting me. It's a beautiful city. I had seen some pictures already before, but I really had never deepened much into the history of Malta. And I started to read a little bit about the history of it before coming, and it's just such a rich country to be in. So it's really a pleasure to be in Malta.
Yeah, and at least it's sunny as well today. So
amazing weather.
Yes, that complements it always. So moving on to the healthcare side of things. So I know that you've been consulting for a lot of companies over the past couple of years, and maybe my first question is, how have you seen healthcare change in general, particularly from up to a couple of years ago, mostly an analog type industry to a more digitized one nowadays?
I think that, well, first, we're still very analog, right? Yeah. We are in the process of getting to the place where I think will be comfortable for us to say, okay, we're starting to digitize. But the COVID pandemic has really accelerated things. I remember myself in 2017 trying to push the agenda for telerehabilitation at the company where I was working back then. And I was constantly getting no's. The doctors at hospitals or the people at the company, just different stakeholders. I was always pitching, hey, what about if we do some tele-rehab, some telecardiac rehab, some monitoring? And then it was a moment in which we realized, well, the pandemic is here. People can't get in the hospitals. You just can't because you're going to get contagious or you're going to contagious somebody else. There's not enough staff. What do we do? And it was the moment when I realized that everything flipped and people started to just understand, well, this is the moment that we have to start digitizing services, making possible remotely what we do on location. And then my career kind of as well pivoted a little bit. It accelerated itself. So I started to consult companies and hospitals. And I think that this digitization, although the pandemic story is almost over, hopefully, we can see that the train, we're already in the train. Yeah. It's already moving. We're heading somewhere. We just have to continue to enable adoption, and we cannot fall back on old habits. Yeah. That's the most important lesson, I think.
Yeah, so I think most people kind of do outline the fact that COVID pandemic was actually the silver lining to it, was kind of the digitization. Do you think, had it not been for the COVID pandemic, we would still be struggling at this point, like you were saying, trying to push the digital agenda in front of major healthcare institutions? Well,
I think so. I mean, if you think about, the first digitization happened after the 2008 crisis, right? We all remember that part. And there had to be a major health crisis for healthcare to also be digitized. I think it was just one of those things that are casual and consequence, and just it happens, it needs to happen. But I do think that doesn't necessarily mean that with this being that has happened, that we will retain the level of digitization that we have achieved. I think there's a lot of healthcare professionals, providers, stakeholders that are keen to go back. So we cannot let that happen.
Yeah. So moving forward, if I had to say, imagine we're in 2030 at this point, how do you see healthcare functioning? Obviously, I know this is a massive question, so just focus on, the thing that you think will definitely be there.
Well, I think that we know some trends, right? We have seen some of the specialties in medicine that have evolved digitally, like radiology or pathology, precision medicine in oncology. So we know that where and how they have developed, and we can probably prognose the other specialties to go in the same direction. Yeah. Probably some of them that are more, let's call it digital biomarker friendly, like cardiology with ECG and photoplethysmography, or neurology with electrical EEG. And then of course there are going to be some other ones that will be a little bit more relentless and defensive to go to the next level. Think about specialties that are very much conservative, but also that have a very deep legal responsibility, like intensive medicine or internal medicine, neonatology. I think we have to see that every specialty moves on its own pace.
Yeah.
It has always been like that. And as we advance in technologies, we have to also understand how specialties advance, and we have to give the right tools to doctors to be able to choose to advance with us. So there's not a lot of medical doctors right now in the space of tech and digital health, and I think we have to continue to increase the numbers, because at the end of the day, it's something that we pull our colleagues, and then we all go together into this next level of...
Do you feel that there's a generational thing as well at play?
I don't know if there's a generational discrepancy there, because I know a lot of doctors that are specialists or academicians that are very keen on getting digitized, and they are very keen on adopting new technologies. And then I know some other doctors that are very young, that are not necessarily the most open. I think it has to do a lot with the school where you come from, maybe, in terms of like what kind of mindset your academia has. And then, of course, there's the other thing is, when you go and you work in a hospital, you are in contact with constant evolution and adoption to technologies or not. So I think that's all. It plays a role, the environment where you're growing as a professional, in how you will adopt newer technologies.
And before we kind of leap a bit into Lapsi healthcare, because I know that that's an exciting area as well, because you've mentioned before kind of your legal responsibility. So I come from a radiological background personally, and I'm definitely interested in artificial intelligence, and I know that artificial intelligence will be one of our biggest kind of help in the coming years. Do you think companies are, so if we say from an AI standpoint as well, do you feel like companies are ready to take on that legal responsibility of, say, missing something on a chest X-ray, so which would pay for autonomous radiology, AI in radiology?
Well, I think that it is not going to be just the companies, because if you think about it, who gives us that legal responsibility is an entire regulatory instance that confers that legal responsibility to the hands of certified physicians. And I don't think that we can just get rid of that fast. So even if we're going to be implementing artificial intelligence and several systems of artificial intelligence that will be giving us presumptive diagnosis, we will be the ones that have to say, well, this is now the definitive diagnosis. Now it lies on us if we trust or not the artificial intelligence algorithms. And for that, there has to be a lot of validation has to be happening. I think that not all the algorithms are very robust or robust enough for us to give them, let's say, full confidence. I think there will be moments in which we're going to be using our clinical expertise to bind these presumptive diagnosis from the algorithms with clinical intelligence that we have to actually, supervise and accept, or say, well, actually not. And I think it will be years before we can get rid of that legal responsibility. There has to be someone that is liable for decisions.
And obviously, AI itself can't be liable. And again, we go on to the risk of perhaps automation bias, where me, because I'm overly reliant on AI, I'm more likely to believe the AI than I'm to believe my own clinical judgment. But I guess that's a story for another day, because obviously the ethical and legal ramifications are far and wide. So let's move on a bit to Lapsi Healthcare. So what does Lapsi Healthcare do?
So with Lapsi, we have been creating technology that is basically hardware and software components. We are like a hybrid company of hardware and software, which is not the ideal for many, but I think it's necessary in our case. We realized that the world had advanced many different techniques like imaging or ECG, EEG, to a more digitized way. I mean, if you just think about the normal typical hospital, at least you go into the EHR and you find electrophysiology records and neural reports, imaging reports, but sound has always been a little bit behind. And and it's so funny because actually, like, if you think about it, the stethoscope is the #1 device used by a physician anywhere in the world, where there's hundreds of millions of patients being auscultated every day in the entire world. However, we haven't really given it the right place or its right place, and we haven't really advanced it in the digital era the way it should be. So we realized that not only do we need to advance the stethoscope, but we also need to advance stethoscopic solutions. So we are developing an array of products that are basically auscultatory products that start with a device that we will be launching next year, which is basically a handheld medical stethoscope, to an array of wearable devices that already step aside from the point of care, and then go into the remote care, and they kind of like claim its place in the digitization that the other techniques have already achieved.
That's quite interesting, actually, because obviously, I think maybe when it comes to the stethoscope itself, like you said, because it's never been really digitized, most people tend to prefer perhaps imaging over that. But especially if you put it into the remote care system, then obviously, you've put it into the reach of millions of people there. And do you envision this to be kind of as a B2C solution, or would you kind of use the physician as the entry point for?
I think, and before we go there, I think what you just said about imaging versus sound, I think it's a really great analogy, and it's also we need to understand technology the same way we understand the clinic. We do screening, which is what gives us some preliminary diagnostic, and then we do diagnostics, and then we do therapeutics, and then we do monitoring. So imaging technology has always been at the diagnostic forefront, but not at the screening. We can't go and give an MRI or an ultrasound to every single patient, but we can auscultate every single patient. So where we are at with the auscultation technology is we need to enhance this area of screening. We need to enhance this area of monitoring, because monitoring is also kind of screening in a secondary prevention way. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to not compete with imaging, because we understand that imaging has its own core, but to be complementary and also to be as digital. So then we can have a very interesting flow of digital technologies in the entire clinical spectrum. About the target market, I think that we're starting with the physicians. Why? Because we're starting with the most simple device possible. Basically to build a brand, but also to showcase our technology from the most comprehensive way. And I think from there, we're taking the route of incremental development. So we want to develop new technologies that will be, of course, validated by physicians and placed in the hands of patients.
Looking forward to seeing how that turns out.
Thank you so much.
Finally, how do you think conferences like MedTech World Summit help you to kind of reach your goals?
I mean, MedTech World, it's a conference that really joins people from all over Europe and outside of Europe into the same place to be able to talk about the things that matter in digital, in tech, in healthcare. When I saw the agenda, I just couldn't believe the amount of talks and the amount of experts that come to this place from all over the world. I think that it's a unique opportunity for us to understand the mind of peers, but also to understand the mind of our target populations and to understand the minds of the practitioners that will be using our technology. It also helps us to bind together, because at the end of the day, what we learned from the COVID is collaboration, right? So one of those big things is, and I think it's probably one of the big targets that MedTech World is seeking, is actually enabling collaboration in digital health. And then, of course, the last part is, finding the right partners. Whether it is investment or validation partners or ambassadors to your brand. I think that MedTech World has a unique combination of persons, professionals, and stakeholders that actually give you that buffet of interesting partners.
Yeah, I think when Dylan and myself kind of set out this, that's what we kind of wanted as well. I think whilst obviously having a good agenda, good content is always a must, I think the networking then is what kind of we aim to set apart from other industries. And finally, you've been extremely successful. We're asking some of our interviewers maybe at the end, what piece of advice would you give to future health tech leaders who kind of are motivated by seeing your story and kind of say, yes, I want to be like Jhonatan one day?
I don't know if they want to be like me one day, but I think one of the things that what I've seen some companies are sometimes missing out is they fundraise amazingly. They create really interesting technologies, but then they always forget to involve the physicians or the healthcare providers.
Yeah.
I think you have to involve them from day one. The moment that you have a hypothesis or you think of an idea, look for a person that is in healthcare, that is a healthcare professional that can just advise you and understand the role that your technology would take inside of the whole process or the patient journey. Because market fit, and I was just, I saw this article that John Nosta published some time ago on LinkedIn, and he said, well, you know, it's not investment, the number one debacle for companies, the one that causes companies to go bankrupt. It's actually lack of market fit.
Okay.
So in my opinion, I think that from the moment that you have an idea and you start developing your technology, you also have to focus on your market fit.
Yeah.
And I think the best way to do it in health tech is by bringing the stakeholders together and talking about it.
The ones that are actually using your product at the end of the day. Thanks a lot, Jhonatan. We look forward to seeing you on stage later on. And again, once again, thanks for accepting our
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.